I don't think any conversation, including this one, you can get by without talking about AI. Now, what is absolutely clear is that we're not using it to just simply fast track our creativity or our strategic thinking. What we're trying to do is be much more efficient.
What inspired you to, co-found Dusted and start your own agency?
I think I was amongst the first 1 million users worldwide on LinkedIn.
I just read a post on LinkedIn for Mahindra that your company did done and dusted for $1 billion sale on the first day. How did you achieve that? What different things you planned and did? Take us to the journey.
Well, I'm not.
Tell me something that you have been in the design and branding industry since the last 3 decades, much more than even my age.
You're making me feel old now.
Tell me what first drew you to this world?
Well, I prefer experience than being called old, but yeah, I'll take that. It's been quite an innings, and I guess really what drew me to it was the fact that I came from a design background. I did design degree at university, and when you're kind of involved in that work in the period that I was, there was a kind of the embryonic beginnings of digital as a kind of design entity, really. And some people chose to ignore it. I chose to embrace it in all its shapes and forms. And after I graduated, I went into a publishing company, and we were publishing what was referred to then as and this is pre-internet days, referred to then as multimedia titles. This was before anything went online. It was CD-ROM titles that you would have to buy and play on a PC, and it was being heralded as the end of print. It was absolute doomsday for traditional media as we knew it. But for me, it felt quite normal to be in an industry that was moving into a digital arena. And of course, this was essentially the precursor to going online. And when things certainly started to develop in terms of connectivity, everything that we were doing for CD-ROM based media was then moving into websites. And I was in the best place possible to kind of really capture that zeitgeist in terms of this new wave of publishing online, consumers going online, and it's starting to become, the everyday part of people's lives. Right now, it's all taken for granted, but when you were first going online, it was quite an experience. People would gather around as your machine dialed up and started to open up a browser, Netscape, and up popped the most rudimentary of websites. So we felt a little bit like digital pioneers, I guess, but it's always been a big part of my early career, and certainly something that I focused on very early on. So I guess it feels a little bit inevitable I was going to do that, but it's certainly been a whole part of my career for the last 30 years, crumbs.
Right now, AI is the trend. You came in the trend when there were .coms were getting popular, the websites. In between, Meta also got popular. So you have, experienced major digital shifts, right? From getting offline to websites to social media, and now Chat GPT and other AI LLM tools. What was the major digital shift that you saw that shifted your personality and you thought that, okay, this is going to be something?
Well, yeah, I mean, AI is such a big deal at the moment. I don't think any conversation, including this one, you can get by without talking about AI. It's such a paradigm shift in terms of how, again, people's daily lives are being affected by essentially a new technology or a new way of working. I guess the biggest shift for me was just the fact that everybody's world suddenly went into an online arena. Again, going back to my earlier career, you were dealing with I guess traditional publishing techniques still. There was still a need to kind of deliver something across a medium which you had to go and buy, essentially. So that the biggest change was your your daily lives and working lives moving into an online arena. This was essentially the dawn of the World Wide Web, and things were quite primitive, things were quite rudimentary. And as a business, later on in my career, I was able to kind of fill a knowledge gap. Because it was so new, your skills you're able to develop for the World Wide Web were in demand. We only had to kind of sit in meetings talking about things like Web 2.0, and suddenly you had everyone's attention because you felt like an expert. Now, obviously, it's second nature. So the world of AI now is, for me at least, just another digital revolution. It's not that particularly earth-shattering, because I've kind of been through, entire revolutions in terms of how communications work, even things prior to that in terms of desktop publishing, even just how computers have matured. Those were the real milestones in how technology has really changed our daily lives. And AI is in all its shape and forms, is perhaps just another facet of how the digital revolution has encompassed everything that we do. And you've got your early adopters, you've got the people who do it technically, and the engineers. You've got people like ourselves who are using it to kind of shortcut work to a large extent and be much more efficient in what we do. So it cannot be ignored, but equally it's something that we're used to, well, certainly for me, used to dealing with, because in another 10 years, there may be something completely new we don't know about.
So earlier it was the digital revolution that made you feel that there is huge knowledge gap. Is it AI right now? And if yes, what are you doing with AI?
Well, we're doing several things really. I mean, we're having to kind of consult with our clients on how they use it, so in terms of their own marketing. We're developing our own tools that are AI driven. There's a kind of certain element of proprietary tech within our own business that we use ourselves and use for our clients as well. And then we're using the likes of generative AI, like the rest of the world, to kind of shortcut and fast track our thinking. Now, what is absolutely clear is that we're not using it to just simply fast track our creativity or our strategic thinking. What we're trying to do is be much more efficient in terms of our creativity and thinking. And what is absolutely key, certainly from my point of view, is that what you get out of it is only ever going to be as good as what you put in. Garbage in, garbage out. And it's become so prevalent that you can now spot when someone's just used ChatGPT to send you an email or write a bit of copy or even do their CV.
What was the craziest risk you ever took?
I think every office move we've made has been the craziest risk. I mean, we've been through, so many changes, not just digital revolutions, but we have had to come through pandemics, lockdowns, global conflicts, recession, economic strain that's really affected how we've managed to operate as a business. But often the biggest changes are the ones that are really localized to us. Again, growing the team, gaining or losing clients. As I said, every office move has been such a risk because you physically got to move the business. But perhaps one of the biggest, it wasn't really a risk, it was a calculated risk. And the biggest change we've had to make was to decide to specialize. We had to move dusted away from saying yes to everything to really focusing on specific sectors, which we do very well now, both in terms of tech and professional services, things like automotive and manufacturing. But back in the day, we would be saying yes to everything that came through the door. And that, again, was not efficient in terms of how we're able to deliver for our clients. And clients want specialists. They want people who really understand their sector. So it was a big decision to make. And and there was a lot to get used to in terms of saying no to work that didn't fit that specialism. So it felt like a bit of a risk, but was by far one of the best decisions.
What was that specialization, or what is that specialization that Dusted does only that?
Specifically focusing on certain sectors. So we don't do consumer goods. We don't do, I guess, we do health tech, but we don't do kind of health and beauty. We might do manufacturing, but it's largely tech based. We do a bit of professional services, but we're not just confined to, say, finance or law. And being able to kind of offer that specialism means that you're much better suited to sitting in front of a new prospect or a new client and them looking at you as an expert. They want you to be able to understand their sector and provide them with examples that properly resonate with them. And we're able to do that very, very well because our showcase and portfolio of work contains examples that they understand and are very much akin to what they're looking to do, both in terms of brand and web. So it's about kind of specializing in certain sectors, and to a large extent a kind of B2B offering as well. But really it's kind of B2B to C as well, because a lot of what our clients develop and deliver for their own range of services and business offer is used by consumers at some stage.
But then you're one of the best campaigns, Mahindra, that doesn't fall under the services sector. Was it because you are so passionate about the automobile industry?
Well, I'd be lying if I said no, because I'm a real petrol head, or gearhead as they would say in the States, which is ironic given that our client Mahindra is developing EVs. But there is a huge overlap with EVs and tech. So when Mahindra first came to us, they were specifically looking for an agency that done a lot in tech, and we had. So we were not showing them examples that, I guess this is kind of contradicting what I've just said now, but we were not showing them examples from I guess, our automotive past of years gone by, but we were able to show them technology and electronic brands that have been successfully rebranded and gone to market, and there's clear success there. And that, again, really resonated with them in terms of what they wanted to do. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that this was back in 2021. And if you think AI is fast-paced, EVs is even quicker. It's, I think, between 2021 and now, although it's only been 4 years, it feels like 40 because things have changed so much. It's been huge. And, well, for good and bad reasons, actually. But again, there's differences between what's happening in Europe and what's happening in Asia as well. But, you know, what Mahindra were looking for was an agency in Europe, ideally in the UK, and they wanted an agency that could really demonstrate an understanding of tech, because they wanted their EV brand to be different. They wanted it to be bold. They wanted it to be much more akin to an audience which is used to tech. They're tech savvy, and for them there should not really be a huge difference, other than cost obviously, between buying their next phone, laptop and car. And that was a big part of their search, and something that we fitted into very, very well.
So tell us more about the Mahindra story, how they came in. I just read a post on LinkedIn for Mahindra that your company did done and dusted for $1 billion sale on the first day. So how did you achieve that? What different things you planned and did? Take us to the journey.
Well, I'm not solely responsible for that $1 billion worth of car sales. Of course. But we played our part. You know, we like to see, you know, the success of our clients and everything that we do for them from a brand and digital perspective being a big part of what we do and deliver for them. But when you have such an effective headline number like $1 billion, people really do sit up and take notice. And I'd like to think that there's been kind of two really key parts to that success. One is their product. You cannot have a product that's substandard to achieve that level of success. And the other is their brand. It's been consistent, it's been bold, it's been unifying in terms of messaging, and wholly effective in terms of the work that we've done and delivered for Mahindra, both online, both in video, both at live events. And everything has really gelled. And over the years, we've gone through various iterations of how those campaigns have worked. But since day one, when we were party to the actual prototypes, we became wholly confident that this was going to be a success based on the product. And all we had to do was give them a great brand in order to pin everything on. And we've achieved that. So it's like everything. If you look at the best brands in the world, product and brand go hand in hand in terms of success. If one is not quite as good, it may not be a success. But if you get those boxes ticked, it really is the best balance of what you would want to achieve as a business.
So for a client like a Mahindra or a very big brand, if they are considering multiple agencies, what sets Dusted apart? What makes you better than your competitors?
Well, when we first started our conversations with Mahindra, so back at the end of 2021, we were successful in winning a global tender for that initial project. And it's like anything as a business or an agency, you have to win work, and there's various ways in which you can win work, and you've got to be able to create, I guess, a level of uniqueness, distinction, expertise. You've got to kind of, you can't just tell them to trust you. You've got to earn that trust. And once you start to do that, you're able to get to the point where you can consider it a proper partnership. And we were able to do that very quickly with Mahindra. They had an immediate need for a launch in the summer of 22, which we hit. And it was given a great success, and it really opened the doors to everything that we've done since then. And every year they've done a big launch that we've developed collateral and brand aspects for. So looking back, it's a great success story. But at the time, you're having to kind of go through the motions like everyone else would do in terms of pitching for that work. And as I said, you've got to come across as really knowing what you're doing, but also kind of offering that level of distinction that they can see as being a level of I guess, distinction for themselves. And when it comes to branding, nothing's better in terms of offering that and being distinctly different in their marketplace. And that's what we do and deliver now for our clients. So you've really got to start to demonstrate that actionable, results-driven delivery, and that's what they really bought into. And I guess we just shone above everyone else that they were speaking to at the time. I might add that we're having to kind of prove ourselves at every step. We don't take anything for granted. We still have to kind of go through the motions and prove ourselves in terms of delivery. So you cannot, as an agency, sit back and rest on your laurels. You do have to kind of continue that hard work and continue to do and deliver and meet the expectations of a client. So yes, it's been some hard work, but we've been very successful with that client over the last few years.
One thing I always wanted to ask you was regarding Mahindra. So Mahindra has a market image in India. It is famous. I'm sure you must be knowing for its car called the Scorpio.
Yes.
So Scorpio is the general rowdy car in India, okay? Which the local politicians and a kind of rowdy people, or it's like you can say even the Thar, that is also an off-road car and stuff. So Mahindra generally doesn't appeal to the people who are very much interested in tech, and I mean that audience is Mahindra did not have initially. So knowing that, how did you launch the EV and make sure it is successful?
Well, that was one of the challenges that we were faced with. Mahindra is highly established in its local market.
In tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Mahindra is more established in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Not in a Delhi, Bombay. It is more established in tier 2 and tier 3 cities.
Yeah, so, but equally, it's not a brand that's well known outside of its domestic market as well. So what we were doing and delivering was largely for the Indian market. I mean, this may change, but we did not have to concern ourselves with North America or Europe. So that made it slightly easier. However, what you've highlighted there was the biggest challenge, and that was, from a brand point of view, how we would handle and unpick the legacy aspects of their brand. There's certain perceptions there. There's certain aspects of how their product is used and perceived. One of the fun facts that we discovered was cars like the Scorpio were always used by the bad guys in movies. So their perception was perhaps not great. I know sometimes the bad guys can be cool, so...
They're cool, but then EVs don't appeal to bad guys. I mean, this was a completely different market that you touched. How did you do that?
Well, what we were able to do was invent a new brand. So we were not dealing with the legacy aspects of their current brand. Now, there was two very good reasons to do that. One is what we're discussing now, how it separated itself from the automotive part of their business that was steeped in decades of history. I mean, the tar goes all the way back to the Second World War in terms of developing a utilitarian vehicle. That's of no interest and relevance to a brand new EV brand that's powered differently and needed to appeal to a more youthful audience who, as I mentioned, 1 minute they're buying a new phone, the next they need to be plugging in that EV. So it's a completely different mindset. Now, the real key benefit there was that we were able to create something from scratch, a completely new name, a completely new brand, and it did not have to be so intertwined with the legacy brand of Mahindra. Now, what we quickly realised was that as things developed, and certainly over the last years, as we've been through several launches, we started to then leverage the Mahindra brand, because that does carry a lot of weight. So once consumers or the audience were used to the new brand and the new products, we were able to start to kind of really endorse that by reapplying the Mahindra name to things. So it's been a gradual process, basically. But the fact that we were creating something from scratch that was brand new meant that we didn't have any of the baggage that kind of came with the Mahindra brand and perhaps some of the older models, because their EVs are totally different. They look sleek, they're sexy, they are totally efficient in terms of how they're powered, and it's a completely different mindset, both for the audience and the product itself, compared to a petrol-driven 4x4, which is based on a design that's decades old. So this is a much more of a future-focused aspect. And what's currently happening, obviously, is that their older models are starting to be redesigned to be much more future-focused as well. So
they are doing it right now. They're doing it.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned that the $1 billion sale on the first day was because of their legacy, plus the product was also great. But what branding elements did you think, do you think rather played a great role?
Well, I think there's three core parts to it. There is the actual brand messaging. So that had to be consistent. When you're launching a completely new brand, and by the way, one of the real challenges there is if you're launching a new brand, nobody's heard of it. So you have to kind of ensure that it's delivered to an audience as quickly as possible in a way that's as effective as possible. Get your point across. The second part is then delivering that visually from a consistency point of view. Make sure we developed a really bold and impactful design for Mahindra that was able to develop over the years and evolve into something that you see now in terms of all of their communications. And then the third part really is then the actual elements that you're using to deliver that, what platform. And the biggest part of that has been video. We've done so much video that's used shot footage, stock footage, tons of CG, computer generated video to represent the models, which sometimes we could not shoot because they were not finished. We were dealing with concept cars that were not ready. And a lot of this was done in secrecy as well. So we had to kind of adhere to some high levels of confidentiality when we're developing this, which was kind of leading towards major global launches, of which we've done 3 now in the last 4 or 5 years for Mahindra. And at each point it's been a huge success in terms of the reception, in terms of the success. And the last one that we worked with them on was back in February, and that's when there was a major change for them, because that's when you could actually put your order in for one of these new vehicles. So leading up to February this year, it was about generating interest. It was about kind of keeping the vibe live in terms of the audience domestically in India. But in February, you could walk into a showroom and buy one of these cars, and this was a major difference. And in terms of pre-order sales, they had something like 30,000 orders, which was the equivalent of $1 billion worth of cars, which was not just a record for India, but a record globally for EVs. And that's huge, especially when you consider not just what's happening globally, but what's happening in India, because the market for EVs is so far behind Europe and North America. So this was massive for them. And again, I think it comes down to great product, great brand, and that level of distinction and consistency that we've been able to deliver for them.
Get it. So one thing I asked you earlier also, why London? Why did Mahindra choose to go to London? So what do you think? I mean, how did global thinking and storytelling play into the success of the brand? I mean, for marketing in India, they chose to go to London.
Yeah, it
So how
seems
did it get done?
it seems pretty wild, but it's worth bearing in mind that that's one of the first questions which we ask them. Now we do that with all of our global clients, and we have a lot of clients from Mumbai to New York, across mainland Europe. And very early on, one of the things that we always ask is why London? Why do you want your agency to be in London? And there's often just some practical reasons for that, because of the time differences. If you're dealing with people in the States and Asia, where we are is in the best time zone to deal with those two sides of the world. Equally, sometimes it's just the perception of buying European design, which is of a very high standard. For Mahindra specifically, their design headquarters was also in the UK.
Okay.
And so we worked very closely with that team up in Oxfordshire to deliver the early stages of everything that we were doing for them in terms of brand, in terms of marketing, in terms of campaign, video especially. So we were actually working with the in-house design team there, but obviously communicating with Mahindra in Chennai. And sometimes when you're dealing with messages at 5 a.m. UK time, it can be quite tiring, but you very quickly get used to that. And equally, I think for you guys, you're used to kind of extending your day quite a bit to deal with people in Europe. So everybody was used to it, but I think fundamentally there was a need from their side to ensure that we work seamlessly with their their UK-based design team. And also were able to kind of deliver to a standard that they really needed and wanted. It's not to say that they don't still use agencies in India. Certainly for the last launch, that was in Mumbai, and I think they're obviously using people on the ground to deliver the local aspects of that. We're managing that to a certain extent. We're obviously kind of dealing with it remotely, but our team has been out to India to see for themselves firsthand what the showroom experiences were like. We went to the test track. We saw the headquarters. We experienced it as if it was simply just up the road, but we were doing so in a way which was wholly informative for the team back in London. But yeah, London's where it's at. Why would you not want to be using your agency in London? It's cool.
I get it. So, did Mahindra teach you anything about EV branding? I'm sure it did. What was the biggest learning about EV branding and consumer behavior? Because in future, because EV trend is there, I'm sure Dusted will launch a lot of EV brands, not just Mahindra.
Oh yeah, we'd love to be working with all the major EV brands, and it's worth bearing in mind that this is a sector which is growing at such a pace. Major European brands are under threat from completely new and unknown brands because the sector is so new, and all of them require branding to a certain extent, both in terms of their messaging and in terms of the actual campaign collateral that they use. I guess the biggest learnings for us, I mean, we were already pretty much up to speed with the world of EVs. We weren't learning a lot about, the key technical differences. There was a little bit that we kind of had to get up to speed with in terms of how marketing was working, both in terms of EV products. So we were doing a huge amount of benchmarking against, the likes of Tata and Tesla. But the single biggest aspect that we had to get up to speed with, and this kind of relates back to your question about why London, the single biggest aspect we had to learn was understanding the Indian audience. It's culturally totally different to Europe. You guys love romance, and we had to relearn that when we were delivering video. There was a huge storytelling part that we were being asked to weave into the work we were doing that felt a little cliched for us, but was quite the norm for Mahindra's domestic market. So we were having to kind of learn a huge amount about the audience, which is part of why we made the trip out there to kind of understand it and experience it firsthand. And equally, there was a huge amount that we had to learn about in terms of the automotive market within India, not just the legacy aspects of what Mahindra have done with previous models and its history, but the competition, the likes of Tata and Suzuki, really dominating the sector. And understanding that was a key part of ensuring that what we were doing from a brand point of view really stacked up and was measurable against the competition. Now, it was particularly exciting and particularly different when we're doing it with Mahindra, because it was India, not Munich or Manchester. It was a different level of experience. But the process we went through was exactly the same. We do that for all of our clients. We have to really understand the audience, because we have to understand their buying and their journeys in order to deliver to them a message that works. So the process was the same, but the amount we learned about Indian culture, for example, was absolutely huge.
Social platforms are evolving. You said that in 2004 you started with Facebook, then came Instagram, TikTok, AI, different things. So, as a brand, how does a brand future proof themselves? Because they built a brand on Facebook, now a new platform will come and their entire work will get wiped off. So, is there any way that they can future proof themselves?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, this is, again, part of our job is to stay ahead of all of that. There might be something coming tomorrow that you and I do not know about, and we have to then find out. But moreover, you have to understand it to the point where you can then advise your clients on whether it's of some real use and purpose to them, in terms of their own marketing and messaging and dissemination of their brand. These really, at a very basic level, are kind of brand touch points. Some can be physical, real world touch points, but a lot of it, obviously, in this day and age, is digital. It's online. It might be an app, it might be a platform, it might be a website, it might be campaign driven with advertising or pay per click. But we have to be all over it in terms of understanding its effectiveness for our clients, because they will come and ask us. They will have heard of something and they will say, should we be on TikTok? And you're thinking, well, you're a law firm, so perhaps you don't need to be because your audience is not there. But if you're selling cars and you're trying to appeal to a youthful audience, then yes, you should be. And then, of course, the other aspects of certainly social media or platforms in general is how they can then remain relevant to a client. I mean, there's been vast swathes of users departing the shores of what used to be called Twitter, due to one reason or another. And equally, the demographic that's using Facebook might not be wholly relevant to a B2B audience. So you have to ensure that you're keeping across all of those changes in both audience and user behavior, as well as what's relevant to your clients and what's new and what's just around the corner. So there's a lot to keep up with, but our job is to maintain, our understanding of it all.
Which is your favorite platform?
Oh wow! I personally used to be like deep into Twitter for my own interests, which are automotively led, by the way. It's not anything super niche. Um, but it's kind of got a bit of a bad reputation. And you've got to bear in mind that, as the name suggests, this is social media. It's about an online community. And if that community is not there, you don't want to be part of it. You don't want to participate. So I guess I've swapped my allegiances a bit more towards Instagram, which has got a much higher quality that you can kind of seek out. But it's worth bearing in mind that people are using this for their own kind of research and search as well. So it still crops up and plays a huge part of people's lives, just in terms of what they're looking for or particular problem they're trying to solve. But yeah, there's favourites. But as I said, there might be something new just around the corner that's going to excite us all.
Branding activities is related to, sustainability. Now you've worked on EVs. EVs are also the major message. Why EVs is sustainability. What do you think? Sustainability is, how is it connecting to newer audience, and is it the future?
That's quite a serious point when it comes to EVs specifically, because back in the day, the sustainability message for EVs was a very loud voice in the room. EVs were seen as green. It was seen as the environmentally friendly choice. And I think as the audiences have matured and the products have become more established, that message has been undermined a little bit, because obviously EVs still have an environmental impact in terms of their manufacture, in terms of the waste product at end of life, and how consumers understand that is perhaps a little bit primitive compared to what the actual hard facts are of how vehicles are made and how they're disposed of at the end of their life as well. So marketing has had to kind of adapt to that. It's had to ensure that not the only message we're trying to push or get across is one of sustainability. But as I was talking about earlier, if you're appealing to a younger audience, perhaps the message you want to get across is about being contrarian or bold in terms of the use of tech, in terms of the use of something which is going to make your life easier. It might be much more affordable as well. So I think that kind of green messaging has been diluted a bit, and not just for EVs, but for a lot of our clients and a lot of businesses. So sometimes it can be a bit of a tick box operation to ensure that certain aspects are covered off. But just in terms of, economic, social and responsibility, there's a lot that businesses have to do. But I no longer think the green card is something that you have to play every time now you're selling EVs. It should become a desirable product. And the most successful products are the ones that are desirable. And from a consumer point of view, you don't necessarily want to be thinking about whether it's the greenest of choices. But businesses do that. So you can ensure that you're kind of covering off the boxes that you want to do from a consumer point of view.
In India, primarily people buy for cost.
So the cost aspect is starting to govern decision making more so than the environmental one. And that's consumer behavior, which you've got to tap into. Now, it's very, very difficult to get that message across if energy prices continue to increase. You can't start to sell something as being more economic if it costs the same as a petrol car. But if you've got a desirable product that's pitched at the same price as a petrol car, that looks great, that's a great brand, something you want to buy into, something you want to impress your friends with, then it will start to govern your decision making. And the thing about cars in general, it's a bit like fashion. Brand plays such a huge part in the decision making for consumers, because for a lot of people it can be quite a status symbol. For some people it's just, I'm going shopping and I need to get there easier and quicker because I have heavy bags. So it's a practical consideration. But for a lot of people,
that's extremely rare.
Yeah. But for a lot of people, you want to look. I have a new car. Come and see it. Oh wow, this is great, Shayan. Show me your new Mahindra, and you want to impress people. What you don't want is for you to show them your new car, and they go, "Why have you bought that?" Eventually, no one will care whether you're plugging it in or filling it up. That's eventually what will happen.